Okay, call the meeting to order at 7:03. To me, like everybody's here. All of the regular members are here. Diane Linderman can't make it, but that's okay. I don't know why I'm sounding hoarse. I haven't been talking today and I don't feel sick, but bear with me. So call to order. We've got the first two things are capital expenditure and capital project funds transfers out. Anita, can you walk us through? You just gave handouts on those?
We've got to be updated. The change that we made last week. And there's two more changes that happened after. After we met last week. We came across, we had an ARPA account and it has $36,000 in it. And it's to update audio, digital. So I took the 6,800 for the mezzanine. And I took the 11,005 for the American Legion out of the budget. And we're going to use part of funds. Town Lewis Park is down cost about 4,500 to reinstall what they had we took out when the senior found all of that. So they're gonna put that. The remaining is 13,200. And it's for cameras, the ARPA funds spent for cameras, town hall and town village. So we're gonna use it for the camera share, which will be the surplus of the money we already budgeted for this and one of the other funds that we can use down the road for something.
So what's the net change to the capital budget compared to last meeting?
6,800 for this year.
Yes.
And the 11. The 11 is over the next year.
Okay. But those are gone too.
Yes.
So it's substantially similar. Okay.
Now, another thing, while working through all the different funds, in Fund 25, which is the IT fund. Currently undesignated in that fund, which the extra money that is built up over the years, is about $60,000. So I don't know if you want to use that after that or anything towards current year for them, but or if you want to use it towards the computers that he's been looking towards for his side, that's your cost.
And I do have Andy and I met with Tom. I only made 8 copies, but maybe you can share if you want, but this came from Tom this morning on 2 different options that we could go with scenarios as far as you met with Andy. We went over things. Tom got some new numbers from CQ Comp. And I also went through to decide who had to have go to a laptop from a desktop. And he also talked to every department head. And so he's got scenario 1 and scenario 2. And you can look at the difference in the prices that he has configured in this.
So out of our meeting, one of the questions was how many of the computers are Windows 10 that cannot be upgraded to Windows 11, which Windows 10 support goes out October 15th. So that's what Tom's task was. And then as Martha said, where it makes sense, we may replace some desktops with laptops. So those employees are portable. That can, if town hall goes down, they can be somewhere else and be fine. Not everybody needs that, but that's what Tom did. And as you can see, the price between a laptop and a desktop is about $70, the price differential. The big is getting it configured to work on our system. We've got monitors, we've got keyboards. With the desktop, with the laptops, we would make sure that the person had a docking device, so they're working off a regular keyboard and a regular screen, which is about $100, because we already have the keyboard, we already have the monitor. I guess
So Dave, and here you can see that Dave is going to get his rugged laptop through the EOC money.
Right.
We asked him to switch to that. And, what else? And then the renovation budget, we have to do the check-in station for the senior center. That's coming out of their renovation budget, and, I guess Melinda has money for her tablet upgrade in her budget under 60.
So one of the things that we talked about was at the IT meeting we had, Anita pointed out, we have the IT fund where there's money in it, that it may make sense for pricing purposes and everything else to order laptops now out of that and not budget for them in next year's budget. Budget for some, but not for the majority that we need. Just get them ordered. Because they may take a little bit of time. And then we'll be ready for October 15th.
What line items would change on this? I'm down to capital fund 25. Is that what we're talking about?
The $45,000 line.
And
Or Andy, what are you recommending?
Well, utilizing the fund 25, which Anita, what I'm showing on the sheet you just sent out to us today is fund 25 is $218,000 in it.
yes, but the other is accountable for.
Okay.
That is the money that we had in there for last. Currently, the money that is tied up is the door security was 28,776. The town hall refresh, 45,000.
Yeah, but that's what these computers would fall under, wouldn't they?
Yes, well, these were past years. This is the 45 that we already have sitting in there. From the past 35,000 one year and 10,000 another year.
But that hasn't been spent, has it?
Has been spent, that's what I'm saying.
So that would go towards these laptops.
That's why I said it's undesignated.
Okay.
Then it's 25,000 for the server room. UPS battery, printers, 10,000. Town clerk equipment, 8510. PD body, 6932. And TV security, 24,686. And digital locks for the whole department, which makes it 153,910. The correct, no, this was that February, so it was 217,787, leaving 63,877 plus whatever I trust you.
Anita, I'm just not seeing the locks on the vaults. Is that,
The locks on the wall was last year?
okay,
It was last year's money.
okay.
Or it was never spent, and they asked for it,
But-
and this year we took it out, because they never used money from last year.
So what are the, go ahead, Martha. So what are the line item changes that we're proposing on the capital general fund budget?
One,
Is it in the town hall refresh line item that has 45,000 for this year?
one that was changed was town hall mezzanine AV expansion. It was 6,800 in that line. It is now 0.
Well, it's 0 on your sheet here.
Right, on the new sheet, it's 0. On the previous one, it was 68.
Oh, okay.
And then below that, it says town,
It says,
town hall meeting room AV, it was over the next, it was 26, 27, 27, 28. We had, it was, 6,500. That came out, it was gonna be paid with ARPA money as well.
So that-
just leaving the 10,000 for this current year, nothing for next year.
Yeah, next year, he has 40,000. For the town hall refresh. And
The town hall refresh, but not the, I thought you were talking about the meeting hall AV expansion.
all he needs is, no, it's gone.
Okay, so the town hall refresh up above, we have in this budget, 45,000 for this year and 40,000. I don't mean this year, I mean the coming budget year, and then 40,000 for the subsequent year. And is that the proposal, or is there a proposal to change this?
Because we don't need that 45,000, is that's what this is.
Right,
No,
it
the
was
45.
35, that was 2 years ago. 10,000 was this year. Then, I think I misunderstood your email, I thought you were gonna keep the 45 for next.
I think that we come under, and I'm sorry, but I haven't tallied this, but if you go to scenario 1 or scenario 2, you come up with,
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't.
35.
35,
That was
either
the-
way.
That was part of keeps the 45, just in case you don't know what that brings.
no,
Now, I thought the idea was, maybe we lower it to 10. Just to
Next year,
keep putting money into the fund,
That's
but
fine.
I thought after our meeting, the majority of the computers we're talking about needing in the next 6 months would come out of that Fund 25 and not be budgeted.
no.
So just to be clear, this 45 is gonna get replaced by 10,000, is it?
Yes.
I would think we should want to put something in the fund.
Yes,
Mhm.
I agree. And then as we get into this year and find out how things go.
Well, I would think the idea with that is that you're gonna have to replace laptops every year and you just keep that fund growing.
Right.
So that when you have an accumulation of laptops that need to be replaced, there's money to do it and it's not gonna hit the budget
And I
hard.
believe that's what that 5,000 a year on the bottom was for, because it was miscellaneous.
Well, that sort of comes, and I,
Just-
use Jenny.
To me, that's more like a printer,
Kind of
Yeah.
use it if there's an emergency,
a switch or something goes, yeah. I mean,
like something blows up.
unfortunately, we redid the computers 4 or 5 years ago in the building and spent a lot of money. So they're all gonna kind of age out at the same time, and good old Microsoft aging out Windows 10 at the same time puts us into a little bit of a bind, where it'd be nice to spread it out a little bit and say, all right, we're gonna do 5 or 6 a year, every year. But this year, we're gonna have to do what Tom has proposed here.
We also thought it would be a good idea to get them before major tariffs hit.
Well, and just, there are gonna be a lot of people ordering computers to replace Windows 10 computers,
Okay.
that there could be a supply chain issue.
Right.
So by pulling it out of the IT Fund 25 now allows us to order them and not wait for July 1st.
But the budget effect is
I would think,
to, instead of having the 63,000, there was a transfer from the general fund to this fund.
Yeah.
You're proposing that it's 10 grand.
so we're lowering it by 35, lowering the 63 by 35 down to
Correct.
28. If you're looking at the bottom line there, David, for Fund 25,
Fund 25 says 63,000.
Yeah, but
that should be lowered down to 38.
Why 38?
Because we're,
Because
Because
we're
we're
taking
taking that
35.
top line, that's 45 grand.
Oh, we're leaving the the other 13,000 in?
Yeah,
yes.
And then the 5, so it comes to 28,000.
Okay, so we're reducing the 45,000 to 10,000 and the balance is coming from the existing fund, right? And then the following year, 26, 27, is that 40,000 still relevant?
I would leave it for,
I would think I would leave it. We'll make sure we talk about it next fall and next,
see how things.
it may not be, but there'll probably be other machines, because there are some that are Windows 11.
But that ought to be enough to replace hopefully what we need,
Yeah,
okay?
that doesn't have any material impact on the whole thing.
Any other changes to this budget sheet in front of us?
Other than what we made it on to the raise the roads, we reduced, we increased the roads last week
Well, we had last week,
We
bottom line, we had a transfer in from the general fund to the various funds of 1.821500. What this sheet shows right now without any reduction in the 45,000 is 1814700 for the transfer. That's going to go down, right,
35,000.
by 35,000. So that would be the only change.
I've got a question about the fire trucks. Where is that on here?
It's the last page.
Total fund 31, is it?
It's all the way down to the bottom, the last page.
Right in here.
EW vehicle.
Okay, so we have allocated, I think this has up to 400 and some odd $1,000 transferring in from the general fund. And I think we have about $1.1 million in the fire truck fund today.
1.1 is already spent.
What?
1.1 is already spent. That's for the truck that they're getting. The 420, they need the additional 175 to finish the truck they're getting. Plus for the two trucks they're saving for are the other two appropriations.
Okay, so the 1.1 in the fund today has been spent, you're saying?
This truck
Plus
right here,
175.
this truck right here, Rescue 38-1, which is 175 is what's gonna get that truck built
Okay,
with the funds that are in,
well, but we have $1 million in the fund today.
and they need the 175 to get that,
Finish.
with the $1 million to get the truck.
Okay, so that. Oh, you mean it's $1 million plus 175?
Right, because they have to finish it out.
Trucks aren't cheap.
I guess not.
Yeah.
It's more than double what it was the last time we replaced it.
Fair enough.
Where's the million denoted?
The millions in here.
That's on,
In the funds.
in the fund budget.
Yeah.
It's on,
Balance, not budget.
it's on number 20 on the second page.
Any other changes or questions about this before we vote on it?
I'll move to revise the transfer from the general fund to the dedicated funds from the 1821500 that we approved last week to 1779700.
Second.
But Dave, you said that we approved last week, but this total isn't 1821, it's 1814, right?
That's because it's been
We made
reduced by
changes.
$800 for something else, right?
Right,
6,800, correct.
Yeah.
and then we're taking another 35 out.
So we subtracted 35 from the 1814.
Yes,
And is that the 1779?
yes, 700.
Okay. Okay, so the motion would be to approve the 799,996 from general government and 1779700 from the total transfers. Right?
Yep.
Can I hear a motion to that effect?
We had the motion for the 1,779,000 David made and Kim seconded it.
Well, all right, so we'll vote on those separately. Any further discussion of the transfers out? All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions?
Doesn't look like the cap X changed at all, though.
And then let's vote on the general government 799,996.
I'll move the 799,996.
Second.
On a seconds, any discussion?
Say that number again, please.
799,996. A lot of nines.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We got it. So I think we just did capital expenditures and capital project fund transfers out, right? Just did 2 and 3. Is there anything else, Anita, that we need to approve?
Well, that's what I was looking at, number 8, Old Line Visiting Nurse Association.
Right, we need to address that, and I want to move that up on the agenda.
We've never.
Correct.
taken on it.
But other than that, we're voted up to date. Okay, then can I have a motion to move number 8 up to now?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, Martha, can you tell us what's going on with the DNA nurse?
I reached out to Sarah Gleason yesterday. They're still in negotiations with Hartford Health. And I know that which town was it? One of the towns just hired their town nurse from VNA and are just making them their own town nurse. I just don't remember if it was Waterford or if it's Groton. One of them is just taking their town nurse to work for VNA and is going to go someone else. And actually, I think that person is actually going to come under, they're going to go to work for Hartford Health, but they'll pay Hartford Health for that salary. So, I asked Sarah for an update. She hasn't gotten back to me. I know they're still in negotiations as of last Thursday. She said we're still in negotiations and sent me an email, and I haven't gotten anything this week. I believe their ask for this year was 40.
Their ask was 50. We moved it to 70 because of we didn't know.
So I don't have an update on that at this time. But as of right now, June 30th is our last day with our town nurse.
But are you saying, did I hear you say that the VNA is negotiating with the Hartford Hospital System for them to provide a nurse at their expense?
They would pay Hartford Health like they do now. They pay VNA now 70,000, up to 70,000 for our town nurse and for wellness visits throughout the community.
So we would just change from paying VNA to paying Hartford Health.
Yes, they would.
So there would be no additional expense to Old
Part
Line.
of VNA here in town.
Okay.
So that, if they do that, then no more expense to Old Line. Then we've already appropriated.
So it would fall under their category. They asked for 50 and that was based on, they already knew that they'd be paying 70 out to VNA and BL New Haven Health. They would be renegotiating that contract with Hartford Health.
So as of right now, we've approved a $50,000 payment to them.
Well, you haven't approved anything because I think we skipped it because we were waiting to get.
Oh,
I
okay,
think that was, yeah,
We
we've never approved it.
okay. So the question is, if Hartford Hospital falls through,
Then we're gonna
Then-
have to.
then how much more would we have to?
We have to hire a town nurse and right now your town nurse provides services 2 hours per day at the senior center. That's 10 hours a week and does the wellness visits for some of our homebound people that they just go in and check on them. I do not think those visits are, they might be weekly, but they're not. All about.
So in the event that the contract doesn't go through with Hartford Health, I mean, the worst case scenario is that we have no town nurse and we have $70,000 in the budget that doesn't get spent.
we have that one.
We have to have one.
they would have to work on finding one.
Mhm.
So
The full
they'll have to go to their second choice. They're not planning on going without. They
Okay,
just don't know. Their first based option was to go to Hartford Health. Now, we've heard rumors that Hartford Health's BNA system isn't in any better shape than maybe Yale New Haven Health, but we're gonna have to go with what they make the decision on because they, at this point in time, are that hiring body.
Mhm.
Um, we may have more information next week.
so, but so that budget line item, it's not that we pay them up to $70,000. It
They
doesn't
do.
necessarily, they
So
do.
they
They,
establish their budget
Mhm.
and figure out what they need from us to make that budget work for them. So they're not making us pay
Mhm.
with their other money that they have coming in that pays the additional 20,000.
What is that, the delta, the 20,000?
They're okay.
So it,
That's what Cindy Taylor works the budget out. I don't know what else they pay for. They have a budget that they go through.
but if
So
things
we-
change,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if things change drastically, they could come back to us and explain whatever the new situation is and ask for additional monies if 70,000 isn't enough to cover a town nurse.
and
They come to us with a totally different proposal of hiring their own. And that would be a totally different conversation.
so it doesn't make, it does make sense to approve the 50,000 today, but no more than that. Is that,
It's
Yeah,
70.
It's 70.
is 70 for our
Yeah, we paid
contribution?
65 in this fiscal year, so,
There were years where we paid 72.
yeah.
But they asked 50, right?
They asked for 50.
They asked for
Their letter
50.
was for 50.
Their letter was for 50. I believe you at a previous meeting someone suggested upping it to 70 in case something fell apart.
Well, it's in our this sheet in the budget book, and maybe I got to replace one. It's in here for 50.
The sheet she
You-
handed out
that-
today
that-
is
okay.
70.
All right.
He was 50 on the first.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
because I
summary
have
is
on
70,
211, we
yeah,
held,
it's like
Good.
halfway down the first
All right.
page.
We didn't vote, but did we increase it to 70?
We didn't vote on it at all, I don't
It
think.
wasn't voted on.
we didn't vote. So we can put whatever we want.
You can put whatever you want.
Well, I'll move the 70. That's
I'll,
kind
yeah,
of roughly the worst case, so.
I'll second it.
Okay, so a motion to appropriate up to 70,000 has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Then that's done. Okay, so the next item on the budget, on the agenda is to finalize the budget. Have we now done that? Are there any budget items that we need to further vote on?
No.
So you have all of the information you need now to put together a final budget.
Yes,
Okay. Good.
and basically,
That's
it's
what's-
not that much different. If you look at the budget sheet that I gave you, we don't have 511,
The sheet.
and look at the back page of that. Not the back. So, yeah, turn it over. Those are pages for that part. Oh, sorry, those are. No big calculations. So the changes that we just made. It brings it to 16.62.
To what?
The change that we just made will bring the mill rate to.
Oh. Oh, the mill rate. Well, what does it bring the budget to? The budget here is 45,610.
On this sheet. Is you?
Well, no, well, I'm looking at this sheet, their budget sheet.
Budget number 45, 5, 575,454.
Those are budgeted expenses, though. The total property need is gonna be less because of other revenue.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right,
Correct.
one total expenditures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so again, 45,574, what?
45,575,454.
Okay, because that's reducing to 35,000 and then increasing by the VNA.
Well, she already had the VNA in here.
Yeah, she kept the,
She made the
Yeah,
assumption.
it's already in there at
70.
70, yeah.
Yeah, we just got it up. The board of ed is now final.
Say what?
That's right. Board of Ed was never
Never
finalized.
finalized, 'cause we just got the number when you said it to me the other day.
We did. We never voted on that. I
Well,
included
we
it.
don't, I don't.
I
think
know we don't vote
that.
on it, but we didn't include it.
Well, but is the Board of Ed not included here?
The board of ed is.
So it's gonna be a big.
Yeah.
Better be.
Yeah, no kidding.
But we didn't, it wasn't correct,
Fire trucks everywhere.
right?
Yeah.
Because it was new.
According to this impact the town, it's 31,516,502.
Oh, that's what you have in here.
Yeah, I believe it.
So total expenditures are updated to the 45,575. And we're good. Okay. So let's tackle the mill rate. And I say preliminary because we can't finalize it until the town votes on the budget. But we need to propose something.
Thing off the record, Board of Appeal is not completed. They have 8 more to finish. So they are not completed. This is the number they sent us, but they have 8 more that are going to be covered.
Mhm.
So that number is still,
But it can move around a little bit. I assume it's not going to change it materially.
it should.
Yeah. So I think we have to do our thing tonight. And then any further adjustments will be incorporated.
Okay.
And so Anita, just to clarify, so on this one, it says 16.64, but you're saying it's 16.62 with the changes, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I rounded it I rounded it down because it was under, well, it's 16.
I've got one more handout to distribute and then let me walk you through the analysis, or my analysis at least, for the mill rate. So this this is Anita's capital general fund budget as of March 21. So it's been changed somewhat. And underneath in longhand, I have written the cost to Old Lyme, our share of the Region 18 of the new Region 18 debt service. So for example, for the coming fiscal year in thousands, it's 1712. I'm 1,712,000. So just take a look how that evolves over the about 8 or 9 years that I did here. Okay.
I'll take.
Sorry.
Yeah, send it back here.
So we can put this aside, but do you have any questions or you understand what I did? I multiplied 81.9% times the amortization schedule that we got from Ian, the most recent one.
Is this incremental?
What do you mean?
So, because the total debt service,
This does not include current debt service. This is,
Okay.
well, if by incremental, do you mean, is it the addition for the current project? The answer is yes.
yes, okay.
And this is what we've been talking about for a couple of years. There's going to be this new project that's going to increase the taxes for the town. The question is how much. This is the answer as of today's numbers. Okay, then if you would take a look at the mill rate comparison sheet that Anita handed out. So you'll see that she has taken the new grand list of 2,522,000 and discounted it by the collection rate.
No, I just gave you all of those handouts.
Yep. That's what we're looking
Oh,
at.
you did?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at.
And so we're discounting it by 1.5%, which is probably conservative, but that's okay. Getting down to the grand list of 2,484,000. If you compare that to the current grand list and ask yourself, what would the mill rate have been this year if the grand list were 2,484,000? The answer is 15.5. So our actual mill rate this year is 24.4 on the basis of the current grand list. But if we had the new grand list, it would be 15.5. So what I wanted to do was to look at what percentage increase from the 15.5 would the various calculations be if we took money from surplus. Okay. So for example, down below, if you take nothing from surplus, and so the gross property tax requirement after the tax exempt organizations is 41,327. If you take nothing from surplus, the mill rate would be 16.64, which is a change of 7.33, an increase of 7.33%. Take nothing from surplus, the increase is 7.33%. And then as you look down the column, you see the different numbers, 300 from surplus, 400, down to the very last one. If you take 1.5 million from surplus, then the increase in the mill rate would be 3.43%. So that's what this sheet does. And then the second sheet that Anita staples to this, I wanted to take a look at what has the growth in surplus been over the past 10 years or so. And it's interesting, what you'll see is that for the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, the surplus has gone up substantially every year for the past 6 years. Prior to that, not so much, right? Prior to that, it was kind of going back and forth. But recently, it's been going up significantly every year, which basically indicates that we've been very conservative in our budgeting every year so that we have budgeted for more expenses than we actually expend. We've been collecting more in taxes than we have needed, and that's why the surplus has been going up. So I just keep that in mind in terms of our decision on how much to take from surplus this year, whether we want to assume, which is speculative, will our current budget increase the surplus the coming year by $500,000 or something, or not?
So I also did some analysis, BJ, if I could tack on to that.
Absolutely.
So at the beginning, out of the audit, at the beginning of this fiscal year, we had $14.4 million in surplus.
Correct.
We had debt of 13.5 that had gone up because we had senior center debt that we issued. So, and the number that the audit had for senior center debt was 4.1 million. Was that our?
That was a bond issue.
Did that include Lime? Because they paid everything, I think, in cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, no, the 4.1 was our share. That was our bond issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
So at 6/30/24, just debt, we went from 10.7 million to 13.6 million. By the end of next year, we'll be at 38, and that includes our share of existing debt at the schools. So we'll be at 38.9 million by the end of next year. if everything goes as planned. That's on the debt side. So the general fund right now is 14.4 million. We took out of the general fund this year 1.65 million for things that were not budgeted, right? So that was,
Is a 742 is gonna be reimbursed from FEMA.
that's my next line item, is there's a positive reimbursement of 742,950. And then Anita, you're estimating that we're gonna have about 1.4 million. Yeah, so,
We spend all the capital, if we don't spend all the capital, we're gonna have a little bit more.
yep. And then we had approved transfers in the previous budget year of 1.64 million that didn't happen until this budget year. So all else being equal, at the end of this year, we will have gone from 14.4 million to 13.2 million. And then if we simply assume that we're also going to be in excess of budget next year of 1.4 million, so that's a positive, but we're going to transfer, call it 1.8 million. That's what we're doing this year regularly into funds, needfully so, for things that we need. By the end of 2026, we'll be at 12.8 million. To your point, it's gone up and now it's going down.
But so we need to reconcile your figures, and I didn't follow them, the others did completely. Anita is projecting at the end of this fiscal year, as of June 30th, we'll have 14.99 million, whereas your calculation said we'll have 13 point something.
That's right.
So what's the difference between your calculation of 13 something and Anita's of
I would
14.99?
have to look at her calculation. And
Anita, can you or Dave, did you follow Dave? Or if not, Dave, can you repeat that to Anita?
Included in my number. So that's why I'm like, so I didn't know if you counted the transfers twice, because it is part of the total budget.
the cash balance in the general fund at the beginning of the fiscal year is in the audit at 14.4 million.
Right.
In this fiscal year, we transferred from the general fund into the dedicated funds, 1.644 million. That's what we budgeted to transfer out of the general fund and into the dedicated funds.
But that was part of the budget. That was.
No, it should not have been.
Well, but doesn't that number simply represent what of the budget, as I understand it, of all of the budgetary items, whatever the total budget was, $38 million this year, more or less. How many dollars are we transferring from the general fund into the special funds for purposes of satisfying that $38 million?
And that's what I'm doing. If we look. Transfers that was part of that 43.
Right, but that's a transfer out of a fund. This is a budget item for the P and L. This is a balance sheet item. So your general fund started out at 14.4 million. And then this year,
Well, the general fund, not the general fund, but the unassigned, what do we call it?
Unassigned fund balance.
The undesignated fund started out at 14.4. We had more money in the checkbook than that, right? Of course we did.
14 in cash, and then in investments, we have about 4 million. Like right now, it's I think 3.8.
that's unrestricted.
It's unrestricted.
So why is the general fund not 18 million?
Well, the general fund may be, but that's the
So- so what I-
distinguish between the general fund on the one hand and the undesignated fund on the other hand.
Because.
Well,
Different.
No, this is different. What I'm hearing is the general fund itself has 14.4 million, and then we have an extra 4 million in investments somewhere that we can also draw upon.
well, again, the nomenclature, the undesignated fund is 14.4. And if we have another $4 million, add that and call it the total general fund or the total cash of the town.
Where's the,
And in addition to the undesignated fund, we have cash in each of the special funds.
but that's the analysis that needs to be done, and it means that the available funds to spend in the town are 4 million than I would have expected. 4 million more than I would have expected.
But those
Okay,
are in funds that are allocated.
That's what I thought, but that's not what,
money is allocated. Is that
that are going to be spent on fire trucks and roads and lots of other things.
Yeah,
any IT? Yeah.
and then let's see, TV then.
It's worth an exercise offline to figure that out because Lime just went through this exercise to look out over time. Doing it in a vacuum is my point. So whether we're not going to reconcile the numbers tonight, but the framework is the right framework to look at. What's our overall debt and what are our cash balances expected to be with some reasonable assumptions about growth and operating budget and the schools, they do it too. They do it 2 years out.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
So there, I mean, this is a portion of what you're talking about, right?
right, this is all in one place. And if there are missing elements,
Now, the sheet that I handed out that purported to give you the increase in debt compared to the capital expenditures for the next 5 years of those two is to enable us to get a handle on that. I did misspeak, though. I said this is just the increment of debt from Region 18. It is that number minus the decrease in our current debt. So the Region 18 debt is 2 million. Our current debt goes down by 200,000. So the net debt goes up by 1.8.
I've also amortized the debt over time. So if we've got a framework, we should work on that because we're coming up against, in 4 more years, we're going to be talking about the high school as well, which it's been assured it's paint and carpets, which it ain't going to be. So at any rate, I don't know that this gives enough context for me to be comfortable with anything more than what we've done historically. And we've always outperformed our collections. So we've been at 600 grand drawdowns every year for a long period of time
Doing
now.
this year because we knew we were going to
Right.
get hit harder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
We purposely, I mean, we had similar discussion last year that we weren't going to draw down this year because this year, next year, and the years, the 3 or 4 years after, we would likely want to be drawing down more than we had.
Did Region 18 take any money out of their undesignated fund and put it towards the budget?
I don't think so.
And they don't publish their audits, so I couldn't find anywhere any cash balances in their,
I mean, they
CapEx
say it's like
fund
3.1.
yeah.
That's somewhat disappointing.
The only thing that we
Did
get,
they do it last year?
They haven't done it that well.
Didn't they come up with like at the very end?
Yes,
they
they
came up
came
with-
up with-
Yes, they do see.
They used 600 and something.
800,000 to
Yeah.
help pay for the
The
first initial interest payments for
They did.
the debt.
Okay. But that wasn't gonna go forward. That was just last year.
It's just last year, but then I think they get a different perspective from Lyme when Alan talks, because that's creating a false sense. And he said, you're not. He prefers they don't do those types of things. He was talking so fast one night at the Board of Ed, I couldn't keep up, but he's extremely well versed and tried to follow him.
Well, anyway, I agree with Dave that it would be good to have a more sophisticated and detailed projection of future expenses than we have tonight. But I don't agree that we don't have enough information in front of us to make a rational decision on on this year's budget. We gotta make a decision.
I wasn't suggesting that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all I'm really saying by this chart is that the capital expenditures that we have booked out for the next 5 years, which of course aren't set in stone, range from 2,499,000 in the coming fiscal year, and it peaks out and then it goes down. And the additional debt burden goes up from 1,700,000 in the coming year up to about 2,300,000, and then it starts coming down again. So these are just orders of magnitude.
The CapEx that you're talking about, though, are just outflows of funds that we've saved up for. And we've tried to normalize so the actual budget number is 1.8 this year. And probably, I think going forward, that feels like a good number, given the roads are the biggest item that we discussed. So your CapEx is 800,000 this year, 799,996 or whatever it is. So that's one item, but the outflows are actually flat, or they should be roughly flat going forward if we're comfortable at the level that we've talked about, because those are just transfers from the general fund into prepaid or savings for items that we're going to need in the future.
Yeah, I'm not quite following you. These, if it's true that all of these capital expenditures have funds that we're drawing the money from, then there would be no tax expense except to the extent we want to replenish the funds.
That's right.
Right. And so all I'm saying is that on a gross level, we're spending, $1.5 to $2.5 million of capital expenses every year, wherever the money comes from.
But that's mixing, again, balance sheet and P&L, because if we budget to transfer the 1.8 every year, but we're spending into a kitty and we spend out of the kitty, the fluctuations don't matter, because every year you budgeted the 1.8 million.
Well, fair enough. But my real interest was simply to say, what big expenditures do we have coming down the road? What big capital projects do we have coming down the road that we have to plan for? And based on the best information we have today, these are the numbers, right? It doesn't take into account how our operating budget may go up, in the future, or how Region 18 may go up. But, do we have another senior center $4 million project coming up? Apparently not, or at least we haven't identified it.
We have things, just like we discussed about the fire trucks. Those are going to get more expensive. Those are all going to get more expensive over the years. We were spending $400,000 to $600,000 or $700,000, depending on the truck. Now we're going to be spending 1.2. We get to the what's the ladder truck?
Crooked Line.
That was almost $1 million when we bought it 17, 18 years ago. That's going to be over 2 million.
And we may have some other projects coming up too. Depends, because we've got Halls Road, we've got sewers that haven't been resolved yet.
Well, Martha's going to pay for the sewers.
No, Mega Millions just went up.
Grassy Hill Road.
Yeah, we've got some of the Whippoorwill.
Give me the general fund.
The only other comment I want to make about the undesignated fund is that, as the auditor said, we've got about, as of last year, it was about a 35% of our budget. The 14.9 is has to be divided by a different denominator, but about 35%. Anita and I, on different occasions, talked to Barry, our bond advisor. And well, so the accountant who was here at the last meeting said, yours is about 35%. I think from a bond rating standpoint, the bond agencies love to see something between 25 and 30, did you say?
Up to 25. I think it was. Up to 25.
No, the bond rating agencies like it 25 or more.
It was less than what we've got. It was
Huh?
less than what we've got as a percentage, but that percentage also is going to fall off as our budget goes up.
Well, maybe so. I'm just orienting you in terms of the market. In any event, Barry says, yeah, the bond rating agencies would love to see 30%, but if it fell to 25%, he does not think that would jeopardize our AAA rating. Just another factoid.
I think part of the conversation, which Dave was getting at a little bit, is like, you can look at, yeah, how much we have in reserve versus our annual budget, but there's also the question of the total debt load, which is going to be really significant. You know, like it's going up a lot. So I think that's part of the consideration as well. It's like you can be able to like pay your bills, I get that, but like if your debt load goes way up, it changes the economics of it.
Sure, but the sheet that I distributed purports to quantify that debt load.
Right, but we're all, okay.
Well, again, that's P and L versus actual debt,
So-
balance sheet versus P and L.
Well, but aren't you worrying about how much, what the debt burden is, how much we have
Yeah,
to
the
pay?
aggregated debt
principal and
burden,
interest?
which is whatever, 40 million, I don't know what it is, but it's a
Right.
big number now as opposed to what it was.
No, I understand that, but what one cares about in paying your bills is how much of that debt do I have to pay every year? And the answer is here. Anyway, so any other
Well, I
generic?
still care about that because all that money that I have to spend in debt in the future is money I don't have. There's an opportunity cost to that money. Like I
Sure.
can't use it for other things. So it's not like, oh, it doesn't matter that I owe $40 million. It does because I'm committed to paying that. And when I have to pay that, it doesn't give me the flexibility to spend that money on other
Correct.
things that I might want to invest in. Like that's a really, like that's a big deal.
Okay, so where do we go? In other words, if Adita is correct and Dave can run some different numbers or can rerun some numbers. If Anita is correct that we may have $14.9 million at the beginning of the next fiscal year in the undesignated fund, how much, if any, do you want to take from that fund in order to reduce the mill rate?
How much did we put in this year? 1.4 million
What's the question?
into, what did we put into?
We put additional, we did it, there's a total of 1.65, and that's on the back of the budget sheet. I printed that one. There are usually my rates, but and the second page,
This one.
the original budget was 42,116,932. 1,352,170 was added to make it 43,768,272. But then we're gonna
Decked out.
right, you're gonna do, yes, the other money coming from fund balance is only the 908.
So 500 grand is the answer. We went from 1.4 to 1.49 or a little bit more.
Right, that's the projection.
I did that 1.5 and subtracted the 908.
I don't know if this makes sense, but just to kind of calibrate ourselves, if you took 1 million out, then the undesignated fund balance would go down to about 14 million. And then let's just say the gross property tax requirement went up by 10%. So it'd be 44 million next year. You'd still have a 31% in your.
Martha, can you find another $1 million to take out of the budget?
I mean, another thing that you can do, if you want, is the collection rate. The collection rate right now is 98.5. You can bring it to 98.75. Because if you saw that, in the financials, our rate was at 99. So I don't know if you want to not.
I was gonna say, didn't we move that last year, a couple years
A couple
ago?
years ago, we did. We were at,
It was at
98.25.
yeah, I
We
think
moved
we
it
were at
forward.
98 at
98.5,
one point, and we went to 98.25.
Yeah.
I mean,
98.5.
historically, our collection rate's always been over 99%, right? In the last 5, 6 years.
That's one reason for our surplus.
Yes.
That,
No, that's
Right.
why I say we budget conservatively.
Right.
And another comment you may remember is that Anita's revenue projections doesn't include interest on the money in the special funds, right?
Right, because that's in the special fund,
Right.
so they grow. So that you can use that for other, and that's how we got to the fire truck, so that's because they're earning interest like 4,000 a month.
But I think we've got something like six,
They got a big payment by them getting it.
in any event, I think it's a total of $5 or $6 million, which at 4.5% would be maybe $300,000 in additional interest income.
Yeah, Fred, the 35.1%, the auditors calculated as the unassigned fund balance, which is 14.4, but of total budgetary general fund expenditures and transfers out, not of property taxes that we need to raise. So that number will be 200 basis points less. So it'll bring us below 30% at $1 million.
Okay.
How do you do that?
So if we've got,
The total expenses are about 45 million, right?
yeah, what Fred was saying is if you increase that 10%, which is conservative, hopefully it'll be less.
If you increase the 45 by 10%?
Yeah. But Fred was using the property tax need as opposed to, which is 4 million less than our actual total outlays,
All right, yeah.
because we've got other income in there.
Well, I'm getting, if you just look at the 14.9, reduce it to 13.9 and divide it by the 45 million, you get about 31%. Is that what you
Okay,
said?
in that neighborhood, yeah.
But Fred was saying that next year, if we looked at it,
Right. Oh, absolutely. If we keep spending down, if we keep drawing down the surplus by more than we're increasing the surplus, it will diminish and the percentage will diminish.
as the budget goes up.
The question is, what is the minimum undesignated fund or AKA surplus? You know, what's the minimum amount in percentage or absolute dollars that the town of Old Lawn should maintain? You know, I mean, I personally think that 14.9 is too much. And I think a lot of the town folks over the past a number of cycles have complained about it. Which isn't to say that we should respond to the townsfolks just because people don't like to pay taxes. Just because folks complain, but we should listen to them if they have a reasonable concern.
I mean, it seems you need to be somewhat conservative in whatever you take out, just because of the expenses going up over the next 3 to 4 years, where you're going to want that surplus to give some relief to the taxpayers. So that's a factor to integrate into your decision, to the decision, I feel.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's interesting that you just said you want that surplus to give some relief to the taxpayers. So that's exactly what we're supposed to do tonight, is use the surplus to give some relief.
Well,
I
right.
don't,
The
I'm not
question is-
suggesting not to take any out because of that consideration, but
But we want to continue to relieve the taxpayers as this debt load increases, as BJ's part showed. You know, it maxes out in at 2267 in 28-29, right?
Well, I think there's two questions here, right? That 7.3% budget growth is not sustainable.
Right.
So even if you're looking at just going to the year that it doesn't until it starts declining, which is 28-29, you still can't have 2 or 3 more years of that growth. So that then you look at the budget, you say, okay, so do we want to manage that with surplus or do we want to manage that with budget?
Well, I think that
And cut back on
that
things.
7.3% comes from the increased debt service at the school.
Right, but
So-
it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Somebody's got to pay for it. So like, then the question is, okay, so we're doing a project at the school. We understand it costs a bunch, so we might need to do a little more budget tightening in other areas for a short period of time, a couple years, that we wouldn't normally do. You know what I mean? And going back to everyone and saying, in order to make this sustainable, we need to make sure that this budget is lower. And I mean, that's what I think this ultimately looks at. Yes, we use surplus each year to help us through it? Yes, but I don't think it can overcome an increase like that. And we're not looking at everyone. We know all the projects on the table. We know that this budget isn't by itself going down for the next couple of years, especially with this large debt continuing to grow for a few years.
Well, the debt isn't growing. I mean, it's
Well,
going to grow because of the
The
borrowing.
payment is
of the
growing. I'll put it that way.
school.
The payment is growing.
It's growing somewhat, but the 7.33 is principally attributable to the increase in the school budget. I think the town's increase was about 4%, and
No, the town's increase in expenses outlays was 10.3%.
oh, I'm sorry.
It was big,
No, but most of that was in insurance costs and insurance premium costs.
but it
So
doesn't,
your debt service went up by, and this is on a budget of 12.7 last year. Your debt service went up because we borrowed for a new senior
Right.
center. So that went up by 270 grand. Our capital went up by 50 grand. We had some insurance, but we also increased a number of other items. And we've also offset that with revenues. Other revenues are up $700,000. So the 7.33 is the increase in the property tax need. The overall town budget went up by 10.3%. The school budget went up by 8.1%. So.
Well, in any event, Anna is certainly correct that we should always be looking at expenses and trying to hold them down to the the minimum amount that serves the needs of the town. It is also true, I maintain, that $14.9 million worth of surplus is more than we need, right? So what should we do with respect to this coming budget, Kim?
Well, and I think at the end of the last meeting we had, we sort of discussed similarly that, the budget had increased and going back and seeing where things could be trimmed, but also that revenue is part of the budget and looking at what areas, what departments generate revenue and are they generating adequate revenue? And I think Martha was going to go back to some of those departments and have discussions with them.
So to go back, talk to building, and I will say that we're not too far off. I mean, we charge $25 per $1,000, $25 per $1,000 worth of budget for our permits. Other towns around us are at 26. There's 2 or 3 at 30. But Mark, I've been collecting the data, and then Mark and I are going to sit down and see if he hasn't had an increase in that since Bonnie was in office. That's the last time he increased. So once we have all the data, we will sit down and that be a change. I know that you reached out to Park and Rec. That is also an area that change. As far as fees and services here. Town clerk's office, we can look at fees. Dog license are mandated by the state. That's not gonna change. And they've started charging upstairs in land use for copies that they never did before. So especially like the large microfiche people will come in, they used to just do it for them. It's not often, but they made $170 in a week. So they're very excited.
Hmm. And I did look over the draft budget and it wasn't obvious to me where we could pull money. I came up with a couple $100,000. We wanted to take 10,000 from here and 20,000 from there, and we could do that. But again, that's not gonna solve the problem.
But I think it does a little bit. Like, I think if you do that and you take a chunk from surplus, then you're showing that you've really held the budget at this point. Like, it is unfortunate when you tell somebody you can't do a gazebo, but because we gave that up so that we could do a school right now. And I think that that's a decision that we all have to, like, you know,
Mhm.
be comfortable with.
To me, the lesson, we went through this very methodically over the past couple of months. And then at the end of the day, we ended up, oh my God, there's a 10% increase.
Yeah.
You know, and we can get the big picture as we were going through the process, so. Now,
But
Because I mean, if you take off.
so just maybe a lesson for the future to be more careful.
tonight's the night, kids. So if do we want to go over the budget right now and see if there's stuff we can take out?
Yes, it's my, I would like to take some stuff out if possible.
One of us says yes. How about the others of you?
I gotta go get my budget. We're gonna do this.
Andy, should we do it?
Well, the other
Yep.
thing the Board of Finance could do, since this is the Board of Selectmen's budget, and say, we
Mhm.
need you to cut it by $200,000, you go find the cuts. That's another
Yeah.
option, rather than the 9
Yes.
of us sitting here for 2 hours going through it line by line again. That's, unless you said you went through the BJ and found a couple $100,000, so
Mhm.
maybe at the very least, put those on the table and see where that brings us.
I think the taxpayers would appreciate something like that.
Oh, I'll tell you what, we spent a lot of time on this budget and we spent a lot of time arguing about $1,000 and
We did.
1,500 here and there. That doesn't happen across the street where the real money's being spent.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, overall, the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen do a very good job putting together a budget as best we can for the community. It's unfortunate that it's as high an increase as it is this year. There are revenue increases that will offset some of that increase. You know, I think we've got just like Region 18 and any business, the majority of your cost is employee. And so we have to make sure we're operating with the right people in the right place, working the right number of hours. And we're getting what we need out of them, whether working 20 hours a week, 25, 30, 35, or 40. Because the benefits that flow with that, our benefit cost per employee is
40%.
huge.
Our insurance cost is probably 30% more than other groups because of.
Well, I mean, the big
nature of
drivers
our
were
group.
mandated to us or just they just happen. Right?
But, you know, was there any change to employee contribution towards the benefits?
Yes, we went to 19.
Okay.
Effective July
Thank you.
1st.
You know, that's, for a while, we weren't doing that. You know, the employees, this goes back again years, the employees were contributing a very small percentage, but insurance started to get very expensive and as their pay has gone up, we've increased their participation.
I mean, I know BJ's trying to get us to make a decision here, but I mean, another thing to keep in mind is there's a real possibility of things inflating over the next year.
Absolutely.
Which
And
you've got to be prepared
we
to
made-
absorb that. So how,
But I think some of that will be
So,
if a project goes over what we can allot for it, I think it's important for the town to be able to have a town meeting about it and say, do we really still want this? Do we want it to come out of the undesignated fund? Because we did this year take a lot of stuff out, like could have been budgeted, that could have been taxed, but instead we said, that's gonna be a project that people are gonna have to decide on. And I think that that's okay.
This is unique in my experience, but could we present two budgets and have the town decide what they'd like to do if they want to draw from the surplus or not?
Well, I guess
Are we allowed to do that?
I don't know.
I'm happy to.
let me ask the question.
If you need to.
Is there an undercurrent here from Anna? I don't know about you, Dave, that we shouldn't take anything from the surplus. That we
No,
should
I
keep
think we
14
should.
Or you think we should?
I think we should. I'm just saying, I think that we can offset some of this by also looking at the budget and really bringing that number down and saying to people, we did our absolute best. We pulled from surplus and we really pulled this budget in tight so that there is no waste in here. There is nothing, there are no extra projects that we can't put off for 3 years in order to get through this particular expense time.
I
We've
think it's a
talked about
shame
this
we
for a
have to
couple of
Give
years.
up a gazebo that people are talking about forever because the school has a superintendent slush fund that they get to spend.
But we
on-
can't control that.
Well, that
We
doesn't
can make the
necessarily
point.
have to be
We
the
can
thing
make the
that we cut.
Right,
It doesn't have to
right,
necessarily. We can look for some other things.
Let me just run through, just take a minute. The items, what I looked at was the change. Where was there a significant change? That wasn't obvious to me. We needed to do it. Well,
Which one are you, what are you looking at?
I'm
What
just looking
page?
at this.
Where are you?
Well, I'm just looking at the budget that was distributed on March 25th.
That's roughly the same as this.
That's pretty much the same as this thing.
The total insurance went up by the total, just again, back to general government. So insurance went up by 120,000. Special deductions, which is Social Security, unemployment and so on, went up by 50,000. So that's a total of 170,000 of the 324. That was an increase in general government. So the general government went up 9.05%, but a good half of that or more are these out of our control expenses.
And they did go over the insurance.
Say what?
They did do the insurance part to a different.
Okay, Soundview, we're increasing cleaning expense from about 13,000 to 19,500. So Soundview cleaning expense goes up by $6,500. And I don't remember why, right?
Beach cleaning,
That was the change in vendor because
because
But
Larry Plow.
there has been discussion, White Sands, I mean, we have a contract that, we had a 2-year contract last year with Anthony's and.
Oh, this isn't the beach cleaning.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
it is. Is it beach cleaning or porta potty cleaning? But we have both.
Well, it says Soundview contracted services cleaning.
That could be the porta, but I can't,
It's the Soundview Commission.
so then that would be
Porta potties.
porta potties. Because cleaning would come under Park and Rec. But I think,
The beach cleaning would be under Park and Rec.
but that's one of the things that
Their
there,
body for the quote is 17,375 plus the 10% contingency, which was 19,584.
and that's one of the reasons is, of course, remember last year
Okay.
we ruined one because we had fireworks go off in it.
Well, so that's fine. So that's an expense that we need to incur. Is that what we're
That's
saying?
the contingency.
Okay.
They have
I
to-
suppose.
The volunteer ambulance folks have increased the budget by 10,000 to include a second ambulance in the summer.
That
Okay,
is going to change. That's, you didn't take that out.
No, I didn't, because I didn't get a final notice. They said they were discussing now,
They have a new,
but have not given me a confirmation, just to send me an email and I had to stop you.
There- that's probably going to come out, the 10,000, because I will tell you, there's a new board. And they don't think they're going to run that.
Yeah, and my only point was, it would be great to have a second ambulance in the summer, but for the past 40 years, we haven't,
I know.
right? So
There's a
do we
change
need
in-
one?
There's a change in command, so
Mhm.
I don't think that's gonna happen. So there's 10. But we have to get confirmation tomorrow, but I can do that first thing in the morning.
The animal control wages went up by 11,354.
All of these,
Say what?
they have to be approved, all of them.
Well, I think this is
you
a
can
good
do-
start
I
and then
think
we'll,
You can do an overall cut to the budget
yeah.
and just, I think,
Yeah, I'm just mentioning items that I noted, and certainly not exclusive. And so again, the question is whether this is the year to increase her hours to 35. Or do we want to save that $11,000 and not do that?
But-
Question, yeah?
but you're paying overtime in others. So if you didn't increase the hours, she was getting it, they were overtime for Kim because we need to cover, you get a phone call in the middle of the night, you gotta go.
Well, maybe, but we've increased the budget to 60,000.
You did,
The
like,
actuals for the past several years have been 40 some odd thousand.
You have to pay her out.
I know, but she doesn't have to respond either. Like, if her hours are her hours, when I called on a Sunday, I was told the animal control is not available on Sunday. Call the state police. And that's who I had to call, was the state police, and they dealt with it. So, it
Which, yeah.
was a deer.
You know, and I don't,
So, and I know, but
I don't think we've made any appropriations or any decisions that were stupid or
Yeah.
unjustified,
I agree.
right? We're just looking through it now to see, based on whatever our parameter is, do we want to cut back? So that's one. The emergency services retirement went up by 61,000. I assume we have no control over that.
That's what. Thank you. Thank you, did clarification. But this is what we needed.
Yeah.
Well, wait, isn't that that volunteer tax abatement?
Yes, well, that $10 a person, that really, it's not much.
It's
So it has
2,000.
to do with something else.
No, this was like the retirement fund, and I think there was an optional, we've been giving 1,000,
I thought it was.
but we were
That's-
supposed to be giving
that's one of the-
2,000. So
That's one of the ordinances that
Yeah.
has to be passed at town meeting.
Okay,
If it doesn't get passed at town meeting, it goes back to 1,000.
Those are the only items I flagged, and I guess it adds up to certainly less than 200,000.
Well, the most obvious is transferred out to the general fund.
Well, we can't reduce transfers out without identifying what we're going to cut, right?
Right here. So we increased road improvement by 200,000,
Because we wanted to build it up.
Old Lyme Fire Department.
Mhm.
Capital by 293,500.
Yeah, we push a truck out. So they need to, the brush. Because the brush truck that got added in.
And push it out, but it's just gonna get more expensive, so you can push it
Yeah.
out.
And
See it, and then-
as DJ's chart shows, the debt service for Region 18 will be more 3 years from now.
right.
So. The challenging thing is we typically finish the year with a surplus under budget from an operation point of view. We put the budget together and then
We don't spend it.
we end up being under budget.
Yeah.
What's also revenues.
And revenues, I mean, our Webster Bank revenue has far, this year it's doubled. Who knows where interest rates are gonna be 6 months from
Right.
now? We can't count on that. I think we budgeted wisely there. We did go up about $120,000 over this year's budget next year.
And they've shown about $1 million over in revenue, and that's where the majority of the money
Right.
come from.
So we'll be replenishing surplus to quite a substantial amount.
But
But we
that's what
spent some of
that's
it
what
down,
we,
too.
that's what we typically
Well, that's
do,
what-
at least over the past 5 or 6 years.
Well, and this year we didn't use money from surplus to bring the mill rate down. But even the year before, we had said we were gonna use $600,000 and we didn't need it.
Right. Well, I don't think we've budgeted $600,000 to $800,000 many years, and we've never actually had to spend it.
Right.
So
Which to me kind of feels like, is there excess in this budget? Because people have gotten comfortable saying, well, I think I want to spend it and I think it's going to be this much, so I'll add a little bit just in case.
Well,
Which like I get because,
But-
we don't know. There's things like inflation, there's things going on. But at the same time, like,
but the answer is yes, there is excess in the budget, as there has been over the past 6 years, proven by the fact that our surplus has gone up every year,
Right.
right? So, and as I said, we've been budgeting conservatively. And the reason that I guess it doesn't break my heart is that our people don't spend all of the money in the budget just because it's there.
Right.
And if they don't spend
Which is a
it, we
good
get it
thing.
back,
right.
right?
Last fiscal year, our revenues were 1.8 million than we expected.
higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
734,000 was from interest on investments.
And that's coming down. Not good.
Total property taxes were only 400 grand more than we thought, so it was 1%. It was 396 grand.
So
I
that's
think one
about
of the
the
things that we,
difference between our collection rate and what was actually
Yeah.
collected.
I think you wanted to buy new cars or something, right?
And then on the expense side, we were lower by $1 million.
Right.
I'm showing right now, we spent all the capital, we already asked to be carried over capital. We would have about 500,000 would be left in all those other funds.
Well, let's consider another question and then come back to the general question. What level of surplus do you think we should carry?
So that question, I have a hard time getting my head around because I've never heard like a unified agreement on what the surplus is for. Some people say we should have a larger surplus because we're a shoreline community. Other people say, well, if we had the big one, the surplus really wouldn't make a difference. So just for me personally, I think that to address that question, it would be good to know what exactly is the surplus intended for, and then that would help you respond.
Yeah, and I've
How
never
big it should be.
heard an answer to that question. In other words, all towns want to have a surplus, like you and I want to have a savings account to address some unexpected catastrophe or some shortage of expected revenue, right? I think that what I've heard is that the typical surplus in Connecticut is around 15%. And that if you get up to this 25 to 30%, then the bond rating agencies give you a AAA rating, not just because of that, but I mean, that's extraordinary. It's very high. But I haven't heard any explanation of how many dollars do you need for a specific unexpected event.
Yeah, because you do need to look at net debt as well.
Yeah.
Because if you have 15 million bucks, that's great. It's 15% of your overall expenditures. But if you have $100 million of debt and another town has $10 million of debt, you're in totally different spots.
The auditors that made their presentation 2 weeks ago, she didn't seem to have knowledge about shoreline communities versus other communities, whereas even though we've had different auditors over the past, most of them have said because the potential of the big storm that could wipe out a lot of your real estate income from properties that might get hit. They're not gonna pay much property tax on the land compared to the land in the house. You should be upwards of 25%.
And that's basically when I saw, that J-O and Leslie was actually there, but also Barry, our financial advisor. And he's the one that Mike Patel was there as well, and Mike was like, no, I just do the numbers. So I got with Barry, and Barry's like, he'd like to see it above 30.
Yep.
And then BJ called him up and he said 25 to 30.
So we've also rejiggered through the reval, the values of town, and they're now all on the shoreline. So if you've got 5,700 dwellings in town, something like 2,800 are roughly at risk.
And risk from a storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that there's a hypothetical risk. I ask you, when was the last time that a hurricane did in fact, since 1933, was it? That a hurricane did hit Old Lyme
Then why do we
and
pay
wipe
for
out
EOC?
millions of dollars worth of.
Like, use that argument, why would we pay for the emergency?
Right.
Right, you know, if you say, oh, it's never gonna hit, like, that's not a.
Well, I think that's different. I think that you could have,
Say that we haven't used for 5 years.
we could have a storm
No,
that hit.
we've had plenty of emergencies that required the emergency operations folks, but we haven't had, at least since I've been here in Old Lyme, a storm that has destroyed millions of dollars worth of shoreline property. Right? So
I'm not
that's
gonna
a-
use that as my metric, that you don't need a surplus, that you haven't had a storm since you've been here.
Yeah,
But so a storm hits and it wipes out 25% of these properties. Take a hit in tax revenue for a couple of years. So we got to cover that. So I get that. And then people will likely rebuild.
Mhm.
Probably more expensive houses, which will increase the grant.
Yeah, but that's the thing, we gotta limp through those few
And then
years.
like-
'cause we-
But I don't think
So
that
that's
this
what,
surplus
but the other
would
thing
help
is if
with
it's really
that.
catastrophic, then doesn't FEMA come in and help to some
Well,
extent or?
Maybe, if we have one.
North Carolina
And when FEMA comes in.
I don't know, just-
5
or
years.
Palisades for that.
look at what's happened in some of the towns in Asheville, North Carolina, and those other
Palisades.
communities that got hit. They have not been able to.
Okay, so we have to be.
recoup some of
prepared.
it. I mean,
Okay, fair.
it's not like FEMA's gonna show up tomorrow and hand you your check. It's a process.
I mean, I haven't looked in depth at it, but I believe communities that got hit by Irene in Vermont are still recovering.
Recovery.
It normally takes at least 5 years.
I mean, Irene was,
But do you
12
think
years
that
ago.
the 14 million would actually,
I agree with what Anna's saying.
you're losing more than $14 million worth
You're
of
losing
5
hundreds
years
of
of
millions of dollars worth of
property
property.
taxes?
And it's gonna take you 5 years to recover
Yeah.
it. $14 million is,
Well,
It's
if it's
nice to
40% of
have.
your tax revenue, right? 40% of your tax revenue?
so that's
And-
half for 1 year. And we're talking 5 years that you're wiped
No,
out,
no, 40% of your overall tax revenue,
right?
right? So if you need 40 million this year, that's $16 million. So it's a year.
It's a year.
It gives you a bridge. I mean, you're
So-
still gonna get some tax revenue because the property, the land still has a value. And some people are gonna rebuild quicker than others.
theoretically, you wouldn't be providing
mean-
as many services down there.
Yeah.
So what do we
I
want to
mean,
do?
it seems like we're talking in two parts. We're talking about our budget.
Yeah.
And looking at tightening that up, and even if we're successful at finding $100,000 or $200,000 in it, we still are having the discussion about how much surplus should go towards that budget.
Right, and based on your 25% number.
Not mine,
On the
25 to 30.
well, when, and you can increase the percentage to 40 if you want to. But it's at 25%, the surplus would be 11,250,000. Just to orient you.
I mean,
So we're at
to
14,900.
the same point, in the years that we've pulled money from surplus, we haven't actually needed to pull the money from surplus because we've done better than budget.
The only thing I would be comfortable doing is raising the interest income. Which will
By how much?
$100,000.
Hmm?
Anita, what was your assumption?
Yeah.
Again, was it?
We changed it to 3.5.
You changed.
Oh, it's already pretty high.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do that other than take into account the interest on the special funds.
We could
It's a few hundred
increase that.
thousand.
Well, you gotta include all cash balances that are invested though.
This revenue this budget doesn't do that. This budget does not assume any interest on the $6 million or so in the special funds.
No, that shows separately in your financial statement.
That's right, but any other cash balances that we've got, right, in agreement. Our general fund and then $4 million of investable something that I didn't know existed.
So not to distract us and take us off into another direction, but isn't another consideration the percent increase that the townspeople will be willing to bear? I mean,
Oh, it's a mess this year though, because this is, if everyone's house values stayed the
well,
same,
that'll vary a lot, yeah.
yeah, it varies very considerably.
Which
You're
would be
saying
on
it
the side of
varies
you
between
trying to keep it
different
as low as we
properties.
can, Possibly
Yeah.
can.
So
Right.
I mean, I think the best we can do at that is the sheet that's got the percentage increases and the mill rate. I mean, that's the.
People getting 10% increases, we're gonna hear about that.
Well, some people are. I think even if the budget goes
No
up,
matter what we do,
yeah.
we don't have enough money to soften.
I think that's an argument in trying to
It's just a.
cushion it.
Well, I think a lot of people who were upset about it too went to Board of Adjustment of Appeals and got a lot of things explained. So yes, is their taxes gonna go up even if we hadn't had this stuff? Probably. So hopefully those people have had their questions answered and they won't be happy, but they also won't.
There's some
hard.
adjustments there, yeah.
Just kind of the perfect storm. They rebound.
It's a really nice house.
Senior center.
Well, and you look at all the revenue we've had in the building department in the last 5 years, like that
That could
indicates that people are investing in their homes.
That could also.
That
go
causes
down.
your valuation to go up.
That could fall through
The tariffs.
tariffs and people.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is that when you look historically over the last 5 years that we've had a lot of revenue in the building department, that's an indication that people have invested in their homes
Already.
and that their home values have gone up because they've been doing projects on their homes.
We've had a big bubble of new homes,
Mhm.
which is a big chunk of that,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
people renovate. And they say they, if 10 grand is their budget, even if they put 50 grand into their kitchen.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Well-
So new homes need buyers.
Well, we've got to come to a decision. What do folks think about the reasonable minimum undesignated fund balance should be?
I think it should be lower. I agree with that
To what?
discussion. I think that staying good,
I-
healthily above 25% for now is good because again, we don't know what's gonna happen with the budget versus the surplus next year and what that percentage would look like. So I wouldn't want to bring it down to 25% this year and then find out that, well, then we go into like the 22% if
Right.
we might need to take on more debt for some reason.
So on that basis, 11,250,000 is too low. You'd want, because that's the
Right.
25%.
That's like your,
So we want to maintain it. This is an auction. Do I hear 1150?
put my paddle up.
So Anna says gotta be over 11,250,000. What do others think?
I'm not willing to look at it on a 1-year basis, because our budget's gonna go up. So that if we're at $12 million, it's gonna be a much smaller percentage of the budget next year and the year after that and the year after that. If we're not continuing to be successful in underspending our budget and over delivering on our revenue.
Mhm.
I mean, BJ, what we're trying to get at is how much money are we willing to take from the surplus in order to bring the
Well,
mill
I
rate
mean,
down?
It's a multi-part question, right? And just one of the parts of the question is, what's the minimum healthy surplus? And without knowing the answer to that, it's difficult to decide how much can we take. If the minimum healthy surplus is 14,500,000, then we can only take 400,000, right? If the minimum is 13 million, then we know we have 1,900,000, and then how much of that do we want to use this year versus saving it for a future year?
The other part of our discussion last year in the budget process, in addition to not taking money out of surplus, we chose to bond the senior center and not take any money out of surplus towards that. That was the discussion we had to, do we want to put any money towards that?
Mhm.
Again, we decided not to because Region 18. And
Well,
other
and because we were
unknown
getting better
projects.
interest
We could get-
rates on our, we were
Well,
earning more
right.
interest
I mean,
on
we've
our.
been talking, I have, and I think I haven't heard any disagreement for a couple of years about the wisdom of having a robust surplus because it will permit us to mitigate the tax impact arising from the Region 18 renovations. You know, that's been the discussion for a couple of years. Well, you know where I stand. I mean, I think we should take something out of surplus. I think we should take something. I think Dave, everybody thinks we should take something. The question is how much. We'll let Jude decide.
I think we should have pushed, Region 18, taken part of their undesignated fund to help soften this blow. I asked Ian about it, and he said, well, Board of Finance chairs and other select people say, no, keep that money separate for your own profit.
That's not what I said the last night.
Excuse me?
That is not what I said last night.
What I said at our Board of Finance meeting with Ian sitting right there.
Yeah.
And what I've said I'm on the Facilities and Finance Committee, and I haven't said that there. Not as, so.
Okay, but that doesn't really,
Okay,
it doesn't matter. They already did
The
it,
money
so.
we still, well, that budget's not approved for us to them.
I'm happy to,
I'll move 400,000 to take out of surplus.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the 400,000, according to this, would result in a 6.3%, 6.29% mill rate increase.
Why 400,000?
Because it's not 1,000,000. Because it shows that we're taking something out of surplus, but being prudent about the future. Again, to Andy's point, doing this every year with no projection is doing it in a complete vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'm
but-
not averse to taking some out, but not very much. Because I know Halls Road is going to cost money. Who knows what the sewers are going to ultimately cost us? Have no idea and no control over a Board of Ed that is not respectful of the town, in my personal view.
So you're proposing 400 in prior years, not last year. We took out between 400 and 600 when the amount of surplus was significantly less, maybe a couple of $1 million less. So there's, in my mind, a logical disconnect.
I didn't know we would have a $57 million school project.
Well, it's not 57 in what we have to pay, right? We have we have
It would be-
grants and
And our numbers would be a lot lower if it were less. Doesn't matter. So if you're looking for logic, there's 3 points right there.
What if we say we are paying for capital expenses this year out of surplus? That
It's
would
all
be,
fungible. I think people understand that it's fungible.
well, but this gives us an actual reason. Like, I feel like the 400 is just a number that we just sort of came up with and it doesn't really, it's not necessarily a number we can be like, oh, well, that's going to help pay for X, Y, Z. And that's why we did that. Like, I just feel like if you look at it and you're like, well, it's 799,000. And those are projects that's not going to help us pay for the regular year-to-year budget. It's capital expenses. Those are things that we know that we want to put money into these funds. We want to pay for these one-time projects. And because we recognize that things outside of our control as a Board of Finance are going up, we're going to do this year and see what happens. And to Kim's point, a lot of times we don't use all that money. So I think that this is the best way to actually potentially lower the taxes for individuals without really taking a step into the undesignated fund and saying, we're going to blow things out. We're going to pay for regular day-to-day operations with that budget, because I don't think we should do that. I don't think that that's appropriate. I think that we have to be able to pay for those.
You can articulate that. It's still going to show up as a single line item on the
Right.
budget.
Right. And that's fine.
And Anna, what's the number for capital this year?
799,900.
Yeah. But
996.
You got a motion on the floor for something else.
Right.
Well, we have, Dave made a motion for 400. Did anybody second it?
I seconded it.
Andy seconded it. Is there any discussion?
I mean, I don't remember what we did 2 years ago,
600.
600.
2 years ago, 600.
And the $57 million project was certainly on the table 2 years ago because it had already passed a referendum.
Didn't take anything.
We were promised it would come down. Those costs are gonna, 57 is just,
Placeholder.
instead we got a lower scope and the same number.
Any other discussion, comment?
Yeah, on that project.
I'm sorry.
Andy, I'm talking to Andy. You're under budget on that.
Barely. I mean, it's not, there's a long way to go before the end. It's under budget right now on paper.
Good. It's better than being over budget right now.
Well, they
On
don't have
anything.
much choice. They're not gonna go back to the
Haven't
towns.
started the project, the building,
Yeah, they have.
change orders and.
Mile Creek has started.
There's a lot of work being done at Mile Creek for months because we hear about it every single day.
Yeah, I know it started, but the bulk of the work is yet to be discovered in terms of change orders, which always comes at the end of the project.
So we have it on there. I would like it,
With 400, it's 16.46.
I
What's,
would like you to consider 800,000, amending your motion to 800,000.
oh, I don't know whether we can amend it after it's been seconded. We can?
Just amend it.
You can amend it and then
But-
Andy can.
It's that Andy
Just sticking with 400.
Oh, I see. So the person who made the motion has to amend it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
He ain't doing it.
But he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
I think he said he would.
Okay, any other discussion?
It's 1 percentage point.
I mean, I'd be in favor of a higher amount.
Then you would vote against it.
Yeah.
So let's, calling for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
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 Motion,
Tom.
huh?
Well, it depends.
Well,
what-
so that's interesting. Yeah, I would vote nay. So that's a tie. So that means the motion doesn't pass. Okay. Further discussion? Well, why don't we just, it's kind of like a bidding thing. Why doesn't somebody else make the motion?
Well, I'll make a motion then for 800,000.
I'll second that.
All right, made and seconded for 800,000. Is there any discussion?
I mean, I'll just say, I think we intentionally did not draw from surplus this year with the intent that this year and in the coming years, we would be making draws from surplus to cushion this blow. And I think 800,000 is more meaningful than.
It is by percentage point.
Mhm.
And
All right.
400,000.
Motion made and seconded for 800. Any further discussion? All for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll say aye, and I assume from your silence, and those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, So what do we do?
I'll make a motion for 600,000.
I'll second.
Any discussion of the 600,000?
Do you have a reason for 600,000 or is it
It's
just a
in line with what
compromise?
we've done before.
Okay.
The last time we used surplus, the last few times it was 600,000.
Right, but to Kim's point, I think that the reason why I'm more comfortable with a higher number is because it keeps us above the 25%, below the 30%. And it also uses the fact that we didn't take 400 or 600 last year and splits that difference
Well-
and says, here you go, here's another couple $100,000 to help offset. Because you've already paid
Historically,
these taxes.
historically, when we used $600,000 before, it was to keep the mill rate flat. That was the year that we used 600,000, we kept the mill rate flat.
If you use 600, it's 16.38. If you use 800, it's 16.3. And again, it will change a little because the board assessment is not complete.
Yeah, the increase, it, the increase over the current putative mill rate of 15.5 with taking 600 from surplus would mean a 5.77% increase. 800 would mean a 5.25% increase.
So envisioning that famous slide with the $500,000 house, how much money are we actually talking about?
Depends what their value was on the last assessment versus what their value is on this assessment.
No, I'm just.
That's the variable
I'm
in
just
there.
saying in this year,
We can't control
If
for
you
that
were
though. We
have a
can't look at all
$500,000
6,000
house,
properties in
how
town to
much,
control for
you know,
that.
how much money are we talking?
I understand that, but
Percentage
we as a
in the
board
spreadsheet
can't
or-
control that.
Martha, you're not omniscient, unfortunately, and this isn't probably a question that has a sensible answer. But if you could put yourself in the shoes of our average taxpayer in town and they were participating in this discussion, what do you think they would want to do? And I was hedging because typically people want to pay the least taxes possible today. So they'd say, take 14 million out of surplus. But the more thoughtful folks, do you have any sense for what the town would want?
I've heard, I've heard from all three sides, the ones that are sort of staying level, and the ones going up considerably, and those that are going down. The ones that are going down said, gee, I thought I was gonna pay more. I didn't think I was gonna be reduced. I didn't think I was gonna be in the reduced mode. Those that are staying about the same, that they'd probably be paying more than that because of the expenditures in town. And I think those that are paying higher, of course, are just not happy overall, but based on the number of appeals, we had 180 ask for appeals, but I think only 166 showed up. I'm not sure how many they actually changed. Anita, I don't know if you know that number. Based on, I think there was a piece.
Isn't it 180?
Yeah, but they didn't all show up.
Oh, okay.
And how many actually changed? Like how many actually?
I
'cause
don't-
I don't think it was that
I don't think,
significant.
Some went up,
Oh,
right?
I can give
no,
you.
nobody, they don't change, go up in Board of Appeals.
Okay, I thought.
I think they may be able to, but
If they're going up.
Yeah, but it went down by several million.
That's a fun.
Never mind. It did not show up. That's the ones that didn't show up.
I truly haven't had time to figure out my own situation. I always just say I've always just paid what I was asked to pay. I don't even think about coming in for an appeal and pay what I asked to pay and I pay it.
So
But I'm happy to go in and deep dive and see if I could find 200,000, if that helps. I mean, between Anita and I and some of the department heads, we may be able to scrounge it. I'm happy to do that and let's see.
But we have a hearing 2 weeks from yesterday.
I know that. I'm just saying that we could probably accomplish this within the week.
And then have another special meeting of the board.
Let you know of what we find. I mean, let me know. I can say to you by Friday what we have found that we could do. And if that helps, then you come back and have a special meeting. If you don't, I mean, it's the same thing, right? If project fell through tomorrow, you voted tonight, and then I found out that they weren't going to do a project next year, they were gonna put it off, I'd be telling you that anyway, right? You don't need that 125,000. They're not going to do that next year. And you'd want to know. So you can vote on something tonight, but if you get good news between now and next on Friday, you can come back to the table. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
We can come back to the table until May.
Right.
You know, we can present at the hearing and it can change between the April
That's-
hearing and the actual budget presentation in May.
So just think, by that time, we should know VNA. We should have a better idea. I talked to Public Works today. We need to go into negotiations. That contract is looming and I'm waiting. They don't have a president of their union yet. They're without one at the moment. And until they get one, their rep doesn't want to go into negotiations, but they've got to put that together. But that's another factor that's coming into play. But I'm happy to dig deep.
Well, there's no reason not to do that, right? If you come back to us and say the Board of Selectmen wants to reduce the budget, I think the Board of Finance would be receptive.
Sure. I'm 40% Scotch. I'll get it down.
So is there a motion on the table right now?
Yes, there
Yes, there
is.
is for 600,000.
It's for 600,000.
Seconded by Matt.
And the only comment I'll make is that reducing it by 600,000 would leave us at a 31.8% of the budget percentage, and reducing it by 800,000 would bring it down to 31.3%. Any other comments or discussion?
I appreciate being prudent and conservative. You know, and is part of this the feeling that we're gonna need to take out larger amounts in the upcoming years, and that's why we've got to scale it back right now.
Yeah, that was one of my reasons.
I mean, so
And I think.
withdrawing like moving $1 million or even more. Because like BJ says, even with 800, you're still around the 30%. And look, we're gonna be adding.
Well, you're 31.
surplus.
You're actually at 31, right, BJ?
Mhm.
So we're over 30, even at 800.
You're still very comfortable. I mean,
I mean, to Fred's point, are these small amounts really going to ameliorate if you're concerned about taxpayer distress? And that's a big if, because I don't know if there's anything that can ameliorate that. But if that's what your concern is, I wonder if the small amounts are just window dressing.
Maybe we could have the assessor's office run some scenarios. If at this map, this is what happens to somebody who comes in around 62%. This is somebody who's coming in higher. This is someone, and just so that you can actually see what the impact is to a taxpayer at the various mill rates. I mean, that's really what your concern should be, the individual taxpayers.
Well, but that's obviously a double-edged sword. We know what the average is, right? And some folks are gonna be substantially worse than that, and some are gonna be better in order to get to the average. So in other words, the folks whose assessments have relatively gone down don't care, and the ones whose assessments have relatively gone up care a lot. But I don't think we can fix that.
I was just trying to reverse engineer because often the slide deck has a slide that says this is your impact based on a $500,000. I mean, pick a number, I don't care.
Yeah.
$500,000 house. And so if you imagine what that slide's going to look like, and you say, okay, if we take out 400 600 or 800, how does that impact your $500,000 house owner?
It doesn't. It's
And
like
it
40
doesn't,
bucks.
it's like a rounding error. So if you go to the, exactly what Matt's saying. So if you go to those people and say, oh, well, we tried to make you feel better by taking out for 6 or 8.
Except on the lower
$100,000.
side, the lower,
Go order a
but the
pizza.
lower priced houses, it does make a difference
So make your
for
slide,
those folks.
go
You know what I mean?
250.
Yeah, if you look at,
500 and 750. I
like,
don't care.
it does make, it is like a couple $100 in some cases. And I think that that is important, and that is something to think about. Like, is it easier for someone who has more means to absorb this? Yes. So does it matter to them if we do 400 or 800? Probably not. But is it going to matter to the person who it actually affects every day? It will. And since it doesn't make that much of a difference, and we're most likely going to end up putting it back in anyway, I don't know why we would keep it over 30%. Hearing that number, I think I should have gone even higher. Like, I just look at this and I'm like, wow, this is a lot of money to be sitting on. But I do appreciate the fact that this is going to go up over the next couple of years. And I would expect that we would increase the contribution from the undesignated fund in the same way, because it's going to go back down. And we've gone up and down with it before. We've just had specific reasons. We've been like, oh, we'd like to keep the mill rate flat, so we're going to take out 600,000. We didn't even take it out, but we still kept the mill rate flat. So that's why I just look at this and I'm like, well, what is going to make a difference for a homeowner? And if it's 1 million, 1.2 million, is that the right number? Probably not, because I feel like that's a really big number and it's really high. But at the same time, we're like well over this 30% threshold that we're talking about. I mean, I think you were trying to allude a minute ago to like, well, what number should we have? We've asked this question for every single year I've been on the board, and it's never gotten a resolution on it. I think it's like a personal decision when you go into bonds and the guy who's doing it is like, ooh, that looks really good when I put all these numbers together with all these other things that you already have. How much debt service do you have? You know what I mean? How much debt service are you going to plan to take on? Like, that changes. But this is a huge number. It's just a gigantic number. And I think that if we're going to make an impact, then make the impact. Otherwise, like $400,000, like what, it's not making that big of an impact. It's hardly doing anything. So then do something and take a larger, especially since we anticipated going back in anyway and us not even taking it out in the first place. It's almost like we're just doing someone a favor by saying, yeah, we're going to keep your taxes $100 lower. And if that helps your family, awesome. And if you don't care, you can give us back that $100. We'll charge you double.
I do move to a vote and get a motion on the table.
I agree.
No.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote unless somebody else has something urgent you want to say. Then the motion on the table is to take 600,000 out of surplus. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
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 Would you like to go home for 11? The alarm goes on at 11, whether we're here or not.
It's only 9:05. You should have said like 9:30, really made us push.
Okay, Anna, do you want to make a motion, see what happens?
I'll repeat my motion. I think that, although I understand that we could go lower, I think it's prudent to do 800,000. So I would make a motion that we use $800,000 from the undesignated fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second, because I still agree.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so how do we resolve this? We're $200,000 apart.
I'll make a motion for the $600,000. I know it's a repeat motion in hopes that Martha finds $200,000. It kind of makes everybody happy. 600,000 to come from surplus.
Second.
Only one night we found 10 in the ambulance.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's going to my credit, it's not theirs.
We're down to 1 night.
Okay, 600 is back on the table and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay,
We're going to come back to another meeting, BJ, and I would volunteer to sit with Anita and give ourselves some more context for the years going out.
I think you could.
That'd be great.
If you can send me the latest and greatest that ties out to the budget book.
Well, I haven't, if you're talking about the Region 18 budget book,
Yeah.
I don't have that, but I do have, I do.
No, I've got the budget book, but the latest
I'll send you,
amortization schedules.
That was supposed to be ready April 1st or something like
We
that?
did, we got it. That was what.
If somebody can send it to me,
I'll send it to you.
that's a big piece of
And the
the
option that they
numbers.
were thinking of, that they were thinking.
Whatever they put in the budget book, because they used numbers for their next year and the following year's projection. So I just want to be comport with what they've got.
All right, when shall we meet again? Next Tuesday?
Wait,
That's spring.
spring break is
Spring
next
break.
week.
Yeah, that's.
Well, we gotta meet before the hearing.
For Monday. Yeah. A week from Monday.
I gotta do slides with BJ.
Hmm,
You and I gotta do slides.
right,
I mean, that's an appropriate day to meet. It's April 15th. It's tax day.
And so.
We don't.
so let me ask a narrower question.
People can dial
Can,
in.
can,
People dial in.
I'll be dialed in.
can you folks meet next Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody cannot meet?
I think I'm okay. I don't know. I haven't looked at the schedule. I'm pretty sure I could be here
All right, well,
and I'll go to work
let's,
and
Michelle, let's schedule another special meeting for next, Tuesday.
Dave, will you be able to send something out beforehand that we can?
Yeah, that would be
look
great.
at? And then we probably have a quick meeting, I think.
Yeah.
I agree.
Longer term, what else is gonna.
Officer. I need it early next week. I'll email you tomorrow. Let's get some.
Does everybody else want the amortization schedule for the school?
Yes, please.
I'll send it to everybody.
That'd be great.
For this.
where are they?
Oh, yeah. All righty, did you say you wanted to wait until 11 or can we get out early?
No, I
This week.
just,
The recommendation.
I do just want you to know, I'm gonna take this as your public comment, but I know that WPCA was meeting tonight. And they, according to our bonding agent, they're gonna have to go back out to referendum for more money. Because they have to budget, ask for the whole amount, even though they have clean water funding and they have the $15 million loan. So it would come in under the 9, according to Steve's budget calculations. He's saying it would come in under the 9.5 that we've already referendum. But according to our bonding agents, you cannot do that. Even with grants, you have to budget, tell the people this is what it's gonna cost.
Yep.
And then this is what we're expected to get. So I sent him a bulleted list today of all the times and dates of that he's got to make a mark on, because the registrars need 4 weeks to pull together. We have to find a voting spot. If the schools aren't available, or if you go into June and they've closed, they can't get in because of the HVAC project, we have to request from the Secretary of State a new brick polling in place because of the issues with the project. We have to get our bonding agent on time. They have to change the CSA because the current CSA that they have in the beaches does not fulfill. They still do not have numbers from Miami, and they have no numbers from Mobile Shores. So all of those things are just balls that are juggling constantly here, and how we're gonna do this. But I'm just letting you know, that's gonna be something that's coming up. And our town meeting, there's a possibility that we'll be 4 or 5 ordinances that will be updating. One is a cost cutting measure to not advertise in every newspaper in the state or other states for those people who are not year-round residents. That's one. The tax abatement project for the volunteer fire department. Possible a sound parking issue, one, and jet skis and golf carts. There you go. Those are all nothing that won't save us any money, but
Oh, the newspaper thing, 50
What?
bucks, the newspaper thing, like 50 bucks maybe, right?
More than
No.
that. Those legal
That's so
notices are
expensive.
expensive.
those legal
Like
notices are
400.
about
Good lobbyists.
$800. Especially in the out-of-state ones,
Yeah.
because they know they've got to.
That's the only place they're making money.
But I don't know what's happening with the legislation, and because there was a legislation measure trying to
All right.
change that. I don't know where it is right now. Have to find it.
That would be helpful and practical if they could get to something like that.
So right now, we're asking just to advertise in the day and the Hartford Current, and then make an effort. Have something on our website where you can go to find all the legal notices. Zoning and planning that won't change because that's state mandated. They have to, but as much as we can do.
Okay, so that was other business.
Sorry.
That's
No,
okay.
public comment.
Now-
Sorry.
We have to approve the minutes of last week's
Sorry.
meeting. The minutes of March 25. Has everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yep, I'll move the minutes.
A second.
Any discussion?
Great job, Michelle.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Minutes passed. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
We're done.
Oh, yeah.
Second.